Hey there, it's Alex, and I'm going to show you what I consider to be the best character abilities and perk synergies to seek out first in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy game. Pretty much right from the beginning, you can start spending your ability points, which are shared by the entire team, to get any of the 10 unlockable abilities across the 5 characters. Their final 4th ability is unlocked via story progression, so that one's off the table. Depending on the order in which you do these unlocks, you could have certain character abilities a dozen hours before others, so choose wisely. Now, starting off with the guy that makes you appreciative your dad wasn't a planet, Peter Quill. His first 2 unlockable abilities you can choose from are Fan the Hammer for 2 ability points, or you can save up for Eye of the Hurricane for 3 ability points, or you can avoid them both and put those points towards any other character. His Fan the Hammer ability does heavy damage, focusing a barrage of bullets on a single enemy, but you can switch targets while you're doing it. This one is really good at doing solid DPS to elite or boss enemies, and often somewhat stun locks them as well. The downside is that you're locked into place while you're doing this, but you can cancel out of it with a dodge if you need to. His other ability, Eye of the Hurricane, does moderate damage and heavy stagger, but in an area blast around him. I slightly prefer this ability because it's quick to activate and is really good against large groups. Also, combining this with Rocket's Gravistack grenades makes for a really fun synergy. Running up and popping this after that sucks everyone to one location. Star-Lord is also the only character on the team who can unlock perks at the workbench, so here's what I recommend for those. The perk Perfect Dodge slows down time when you dodge an incoming attack. Kinda useful normal slow-mo dodge skill, however, during this slow-mo period, your guns don't generate any heat, letting you fire for longer before reloading. You can also manually activate slow-mo by dodging forward while firing, which will put you into a slow-mo slide, but that way will still generate weapon heat. The other perk I recommend synergizes really well with Perfect Dodge, which is the low life buff. When you're below 25% health, you shoot at double speed with this thing. This makes your weapon overheat pretty quickly, but if you're regularly popping those perfect dodges, you get to fire at double speed without having to reload at all during it. Also, if you're purposely getting into low health to get this attack speed buff, and wait until your shield regenerates over your HP bar, you can maintain this buff throughout a fight while still being fairly safe from death. Just don't accidentally pick up any health or you will lose that double attack speed. Next is the most cuddly but least cuddly member of the Guardians, Rocket. He can either get the Gravistack grenade ability for 2 points or the Glowing Pains grenade for 3 ability points. The Gravistack grenade deals no damage or stagger, but very importantly pulls all enemies in the area to one centralized location. This ability synergizes perfectly with almost every other ability in the game, so this is an absolute no-brainer. Grab this one as soon as possible. His other ability, Glowing Pain Grenades, I found to be somewhat less useful, but it shocks and deals light stagger while also putting a debuff on the targets that make them take even more stagger damage than after. Whenever you fill the stagger meter, which is below the enemy's health bar, you can activate a big hit on them, which sometimes severs parts. This mechanic will come more into play later into the game, so I easily recommend getting Gravistack Grenade long before Glowing Pains. Next is Thanos' preferred daughter color, green, the deadliest woman in the galaxy, Gamora. She can either get the Shadow Strike ability for 2 points or the Stagger Wave ability for 3 points. Shadow Strike calls her in to warp slash between a group of enemies, dealing moderate damage to each. This is usually a lot more useful than her starting ability since it deals pretty high damage to entire groups of enemies as opposed to just one. Her other ability is Stagger Wave, which strikes a single target for moderate stagger damage, which then blasts out a wave that deals further stagger damage to enemies behind the target. Again, just inflicting stagger is more useful later on in the game, so I recommend holding off until later for this one. Grab her strong AoE Shadow Strike first and get the other one a little later. Next is the immensely verbose Gardener of the Galaxy, Groot. Groot can either get the Uproot ability for 2 points or the Mammoth Grab ability for 3 points. Uproot summons spikes from the ground that deal moderate damage and pop targets up into the air. This works well as a group damage dealer and a crowd controller of small to medium-sized enemies. If I was too far away after popping Rocket's Gravistack grenades, I would often activate Uproot to take care of the bunched up enemies for me. Groot's other ability, Mammoth Grab, is similar to his starting ability, but this one can ensnare a single large enemy and inflict moderate stagger. Depending on the enemy, they stay stuck for different amounts of time, but this does make for a really solid opening for dealing high bursts of damage. Either of these abilities are pretty good choices, one's just better at groups and one's better at single targets. And last, the sarcasm-resistant beefcake, Drax the Destroyer. He can either get the Catathian Charge for 2 ability points, or the Pound and Pummel for 3. The Catathian Charge will send Drax rushing forward in a straight line to his target, dealing damage and moderate stagger along the way. You generally want to use this on backline targets because you want Drax running through as many enemies as possible. This is honestly a tough one to line up effectively, and I recommend saving up to get his other ability first, Pound and Pummel. That sends him crashing in from above to deal damage and stagger to a group of enemies. It's quick, easy to aim, and gets the job done. So, quick recap of my personal favorites. First, Rocket's Gravistack Grenade is one of my most used abilities just because clumping up enemies works so darn well synergized with every other character. It also functions as a really effective disable since they kinda just hang there for a bit. Second, Star-Lord's 2 abilities are both pretty equally useful for very different situations. So if you prefer single target high damage, go for Fan the Hammer, or if you prefer quicker AoE damage, go for Eye of the Hurricane. Then I found Groot's skills to be the next best, grab Uproot for the area damage and pop-up, or Mammoth Grab if you prefer holding down the harder enemy types. Gamora's AoE Shadow Strike is pretty strong and worth getting early to mid-game, but her Stagger Wave can be avoided till later. No offense Drax, but I found his abilities to be the least potent, but Pound and Pummel was the better of the two. Those of course were just my opinions, so take all that info and just do your own thing with it. Overall, I personally found Guardians of the Galaxy combat system to have a somewhat slow start, but once more mechanics and abilities opened up to me, it got more entertaining and somewhat even hectic at times. Now, since I luckily got to play this a bit early thanks to Square Enix, I'm very curious what the rest of you all think of Guardians of the Galaxy, so hit me up in the comments with your thoughts on it. Before I wrap this all up, if you happen to enjoy today's breakdown, well, I cover most all new game releases in a similar fashion here on Boomstick Gaming, so stick around if you like what I do. As always, thanks for watching, this has been Alex, and I'll see you in the next one pretty soon.